Xbox has made a lot of interesting decisions lately, but none have been as great as the lineup that they have coming out this month. It started out with Keeper, which was incredible, but it was followed up by the game I have been most excited for this month, Ninja Gaiden 4. From the brutal, gory trailers to the incredible demo I got to try at the Tokyo Game Show, I was overwhelmingly excited to dive in. I had high hopes for it, and after playing through the game, I can say it's become one of my favorites that I've played this year so far. However, in this video, I want to talk about how it runs on the Steam Deck, and whether it's worth getting on the deck to play on the go. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. A copy of the game was provided by Xbox Game Studios for review. Thank you. Ahead of its release, Ninja Gaiden 4 did receive the Steam Deck Verified badge, which made me a little wary. Big releases that get the verified badge early tend to have some issues, and I was worried that this would fall under the same category. The system requirements are quite beefy too, so it seemed to fall under it so far. However, Ninja Gaiden 4 is fantastic on the Steam Deck, and it really did shock me. What set me back initially is the game has a specific Steam Deck mode which keeps the game on lower settings with dynamic resolution and FSR prioritizing performance with a frame rate cap of 30 frames per second. This is completely playable throughout the entire game, so playing out of the box is definitely doable. And after playing as much as I have, I would keep it there. The game is optimized very well and can actually hit 60 frames per second with the GPU clock speed frequency set to 1600 MHz, and you can turn off Steam Deck mode to get some better visuals and lighting. However, the game continually froze in these scenarios. Sometimes it would freeze in the middle of the fight, or sometimes in the loading screen, but it would freeze. And one time I forced quit after a freeze and it completely screwed up the game trying to load back in, though I fixed this by verifying the game files. It seems as though the game has been tailored to the deck's hardware. It never fully utilizes everything, and if you try to force it, it will freeze. The freeze also happened when using the Steam Deck equals 0 command launch option, so that wasn't an option. And while turning Steam Deck mode off can improve lighting, changing from low to high settings didn't change all that much. The only other thing we could do to improve the experience is raising the frame rate to 45 frames per second with Steam Deck mode on. This will hold strong for most of the game with some slight drops in boss fights. It does feel a lot better, but it leaves one big problem: input lag. Setting the frame rate to 45 introduces input lag and it will get in the way. There were multiple times I should have dodged or blocked, but the slight lag caused me to die. We could set to 60 frames per second here as well, but there will be more fluctuations that will cause problems. Ultimately, as much as I wanted to push the frame rate up, it just always came with some downside that wasn't worth it. Whether it be the game freezing or input lag that causes death, there will always be some issue that is unavoidable. Steam Deck mode being on is also essential for higher frame rate gameplay, which made trying to use VSync with a lower hertz display rate like 45 impossible since it locks out the setting. I also tried to use lossless scaling, and even at 2x there's enough input lag to feel noticeable in combat. It also made the game's colors look a little desaturated, sucking out that vibrant color I came to love. This may have just been my device, but I still feel it's worth mentioning. So while the game can be pushed to a higher frame rate, it comes with some pretty big downsides that I wouldn't recommend playing with. It can be fully played at 30 frames per second and should be playable with Steam Deck mode turned off for better lighting. But to minimize any issues, I recommend playing with Steam Deck mode on and disabling the frame rate limiter so we can eliminate any input lag. It doesn't feel as good as 60 frames per second, so there are some big compromises, but it is playable. If you want to try playing at 60 frames per second, it does work and really feels incredible, but it will need Steam Deck mode turned on, GPU clock speed frequency set to 1600 MHz, and you run the risk of random freezing. I was able to complete a chapter or two and a few purgatory fights sometimes before it froze, but it is completely random and has just randomly crashed almost immediately after starting the game and hitting a loading screen. The game does support 16:10 resolutions though, has cloud saves, and the controller support is solid. There are also HDR settings, and it recognizes the Steam Deck OLED screen and should turn on by default. Ultimately, Ninja Gaiden 4 on the Steam Deck was always going to be a compromise, but I think the pros outweigh the cons. Being able to play the newest game in the series with the decent quality that it has and a stable 30 frames per second frame rate is pretty awesome. And being able to push it to 45 while having Steam Deck mode on is really great. It does introduce that little bit of input lag that I dislike, but it is still relatively playable, and if you can deal with that, then it will feel much better. It is a little bit weird how optimized the game is, but when trying to push it a little bit more than what the default is, it does freeze. But in the end, it is playable and it has absolutely earned that verified badge. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. And a huge thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. See you next time.